Hi, Ange. I know you're going through a tough time right now, but I want to give you a little story. Sometimes, I don't know, hard times, you know, hard times are hard, and everybody goes through them and stuff. And I know you're going through it right now and stuff, and there's been times in my life when I just felt that things would never get better. I was in a hole and I couldn't get out, and those kind of things and stuff, and hardest times that I can think of in my life was when your mom left me. I mean, things weren't great between us and stuff. We had an okay marriage. It wasn't great. I mean, she was very difficult to live with her, alcoholism and that kind of thing. And I tried to deal with that the best I could. But anyway, we had two wonderful kids. We had an okay house. I mean, it was nice. No complaints. I was making it better. We were fixing things up and landscaping and things like that and stuff. And once a year I'd go off on my little fishing trip, down to get salmon in El Waco, and there's the mouth of the Columbia River. And I'd come back with anywhere from 4 or 5 salmon to 11 or 12 salmon, and we'd smoke some and we'd can some and we'd freeze some, and it was a meat run. It was food for our table, and it was good food. And anyway, for whatever reason, she decided that she didn't like being married to me anymore. And so one year when I went down to Waco, I would, there was no cell phones back then, no internet, nothing like that. I mean, so I'd call home, and she never answered. Nobody answered. And I called and called and called, and finally I called my parents because I was really worried about what was going on. And anyway, my dad said, he said, you better come home. And he goes, come here first, and so I went there, and and there was Morgan, and anyway, a letter from her basically saying that she took you, and I had Morgan, and that was that. It was an even split, Well, I mean, I couldn't fathom never seeing you again, and so I got a lawyer, and I tried to fight all I could to get custody of you. I mean, or at least a visitation and stuff, But she ended up, lying to the court and doing what she does and going up there crying and being a little Miss Bo Peep in her dress and stuff. And I thought at one time that maybe she was sleeping with the judge. I mean, because everything she ever asked for, he'd give her. This went on for like 2 years. And anyway, at one point, I'd lost almost everything there was to lose, and I don't know why she hated me so bad. She was the one that left the marriage. And anyway, El Waco to me was still something that I enjoyed doing, and it was still a meat run. I mean, I could go down there and get fish, and that fish would last me for a long time. And but anyway, this one year, she decided that she would take the boat away from me. And it wasn't much of a boat. It was just, it was a broken down little trailer, but it would haul it, and it was a broken down little boat. I actually sank it down there one year. I tied it to the dock, and it had a hole in the bottom of it from being out in the rough water the day before, and it sank, and I got it up off of the bottom of the bay, and I brought it home, and I tore it all apart, and I patched it up, and put new floor in it and everything, and anyway, she went to court, and the judge gave it to her. She told the judge that, I need that boat so I can take the kids out fishing, and the judge gave it to her. She already had everything else. I mean, so I might as well give her that too, I guess. And most of my pay, I had almost no money coming in. I mean, the church actually gave me a basket of food for Thanksgiving because I wasn't going to have a Thanksgiving. And anyway, but when August came around, when I went down there to El Waco and stuff, I didn't have a boat now. And I thought about it, and I was pretty sad and that kind of thing. But I thought, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to let her win. And so I decided to be a fighter instead of a victim. I thought, I can do something about this. And I remember how many times did I go down there fishing alone by myself. And it would have been so nice to have somebody else with me. I mean, because to catch a salmon and net it up by yourself is pretty difficult. So I thought, and I didn't have any money, So I had enough money, and I got a tank full of gas in my car to get down there and back. And anyway, I had $20, two $10 bills. And so I got up my fishing pole, and I took my backpack, and it was a backpack that Lois made me. I didn't even have a store-bought backpack. And so I put all my stuff in my backpack that I would need, fishing gear and stuff, and I had my fishing pole. And I drove down to El Waco, and I got down there early in the morning, and I started walking around the marina and looking for people that would be in a boat by themselves or look like they'd have enough room in their boat that maybe I could hitchhike a ride with them. And it was embarrassing. And but I thought, I'm going to do it anyway because I want to go fishing, and I don't want her to get this over on me, I guess, more than anything else. And so I went around, I started asking people if they would have room on their boat for me. And I didn't give them a sad story. I just told them I enjoy fishing, and I don't have a boat right now. And if they'd have room on their boat, I said, I have $10 I can give you for fuel or whatever. And that's all I had. I mean, I really didn't have any other money. And anyway, I got turned down and turned down and turned down and turned down. And finally I came to this one guy sitting in this boat. And it was about I think it was a 19-foot boat. It was a good sized boat, and he's sitting there by himself doing some stuff, and the boat was all open. It wasn't no roof on it or anything, and I asked him, I said, by any chance, would you have room in your boat for one more person? I said, I have $10 I can give you. And he looked at me and he says, well, he goes, it's all right with me. He goes, the father-in-law doesn't care. And he said, he's off getting some bait right now. And I go, all right. So I waited there, and anyway, the father-in-law came back, and he told me, he says that guy told the father-in-law, he told him, he said, hey, this guy'd like to go fishing with us for the day. And he said, he doesn't have a boat right now. And father-in-law looked at me and he says, well, he's white. It's okay with me. Anyway, I thought that was a little different way of looking at things. But anyway, I didn't care. I get to go out in the boat. And so I told myself, I'm going to go over and get some bait. I'll be right back. So I went down and got some bait. That's what my other $10 was for. And I came back and I had my little bag of bait. And anyway, I got on the boat and I kind of stayed out of their way. I sat all the way in the back and stayed out of their way. And when we got out to the river, they were telling me on the way out, they said, well, the fishing hasn't been very good. They've been down there for 2 or 3 days, and they've only caught 2 or 3 fish in that whole time, and the boat hadn't been running very good. And they said it might not be a very good trip, and it might be a short day if the boat doesn't run good and stuff. And I figured even a short day is better than no day. But the boat ran good that day. I don't know if God was smiling on me or what was going on, but the boat ran good. We went out there, and I'd fished that river for years and years and years, and I set my pole up, and they had both theirs running off both sides and the back, so I put mine out in the middle, and so anyway, we weren't out there very long, and I caught a fish, and and I brought it in and stuff, you know, and then we caught another one, or I caught another one, and then I caught another one, you know, and they hadn't even got a bite yet, you know, and I was catching all the fish, and finally the one guy he says, well, what the heck are you doing there anyway, you know? And so I showed him my setup and how I always set up for catching fish down there. There's a certain way of doing things and stuff, you know. I had the little flasher and that kind of stuff, you know, and the hook had to be a certain distance back from the flasher, and I think that's where a lot of people didn't do it right. And I told him, I said, well, I've got another setup. I could set one of your guys' poles up with this, and oh yeah, that'd be great, you know. And so I set one of their poles up. And anyway, we're allowed 2 fish a piece for the whole day, or 6 fish for the boat. I caught 5 of those 6 fish, and the other fish was caught on the setup that I set up for them. And anyway, once we had our limit, we started back in, and I opened up my backpack. I had lunch in my backpack too, you know, so had some food and some drink in there. And anyway, I opened up my backpack and I put my apron on that Lois had made me, and I cleaned all the fish on the way back into port, you know, so all 6 fish were nice and clean by the time we got back. And I had a big plastic bag to put my fish in. I mean, so I took you know, 2 bigger ones and stuff, but they got 4 fish. They only caught 1, but they got 4 fish that day. And I went to give the guy the $10, and he told me, he says you keep that $10. He said what we learned today was worth far more than $10. And anyway, it was one of my most memorable fishing trips I ever had down there. And anyway, it just kind of shows that, I guess, you know, life gives you lemons, you know, and life gives you hard times, and it's how you react to these hard times. And it's not easy. And sometimes you have to just kind of think that, am I going to let this get the better of me? Or am I going to fight back? Am I going to do something about it? Am I going to take control over my life? And if I'm going to make a better situation out of this than just, you know, letting the whatever fall where they fall at, you know, and so I've tried to do that in my life, you know, and I've had a lot of, you know, tough times. I don't deal well with hardships, you know. And when Nancy and I broke up, I mean, it wasn't something I wanted, and I ended up, you know, having a lot of health problems after that. You know, I went in the hospital a couple times, thought I was having a heart attack and stuff, you know, and I guess it was probably stress, you know. And one time they had to basically knock me out in order to get my heart to start beating correctly again. And going through it with Lucy, you know, pretty much the same thing. But I ended up going to the ER 3 times, you know, during when I was going through the divorce with Lucy and stuff. It's horribly stressful for me, and I didn't like it. But there's my body is what my body is and stuff, you know. But I try to focus on what can I do to make this better. In the insurance industry, they call it mitigation. You try to mitigate the loss. You try to make things better than if you just let things fall where they do. So anyway, try to think of the story, and when you're going through a hard time, and try to think about, well, what can you do? What are your choices? Can you just let the world fall down around you, or can you do something about it? You know, and maybe, you know, you're worried about losing your house. Maybe you can rent it out. Maybe you can take a room over here for a while or something like that. I had to go live with my parents for a couple of weeks, and they wouldn't even let you guys come stay come stay there when I had you. You know, I don't know if you remember or not, but I only stayed with my parents for a couple of weeks. I mean, I did everything I could to try to find another place to live, but every weekend when I had you, I'd go to one of my other friends' house and stuff, you know, and sleep on the couch, and you guys would be on your sleeping bags on the floor, and then during the week, you know, I'd go back to my parents' house, and I only did that for I think 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. And I found that room I could rent, you know, and I rented that room from that lady over there by what is it, Black Lake or something, over there on the other side of Olympia. And I stayed there for a couple of years, you know, because it's what I could afford, and didn't have a lot of money coming in or nothing, you know. And then I met Nancy, you know, and eventually moved in with Nancy, and things got better. You know, we bought a house and that kind of stuff. You know, the story goes on. But you do what you got to do. Life is full of hardships, and I just hope that, you know, you don't give up. You see a lot of these people living on the streets, and I think they're just people who've given up. You know, it's just easier to not even try anymore. Anyway, I've always been someone who's tried to do my best. I've never been, as I think, a great father or provider or that kind of thing. I dropped out of high school and never had much of an education, and even my kids made fun of me and stuff when I would, you know, mistype things or say the wrong word or something like that, you know. And I've always tried to do my best. So anyway, I love you. I've always loved you. Always will love you. And you have a family that'll take care of you, and you'll never be homeless. And all you got to do is ask. You know, get a plan. I don't think Alaskan Airlines is going to go under. It's too big of a company, and it's too good of a company. They may downsize, they may reduce flights, they may do some things or something, but they're not going to go under. They're going to keep their good employees and stuff, and you are a good employee. So anyway, maybe you can get a temporary job for a while doing something else. Anyway, don't forget I love you, and I hope this helps. Call me anytime you want to talk. Come over here, you know. I mean, I'm still healthy, you're still healthy. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic right now and stuff like that, but, you know, we can both put on hazmat suits and give each other a hug, I guess. I love you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.